Hey y'all, Data Guy here. And since it seems like y'all love my video on SQL databases and putting them in kind of a tier list, I wanted to do the same for analytics tools. There are a billion analytics tools out there, so I probably won't be going through all of them, but I'll be going through some of the major ones to just kind of give you my take, my perspective on what they're useful for, what they're not useful for. Um, and yeah, just kind of talk about it. Hopefully give you a sense of, hey, this is what analytics tools are right for your use case. I'll talk about hey, what are they really well suited for, what are they not well suited for, and hopefully you'll walk away with exactly what analytics tool you want. And if you like these videos, please like and subscribe. It helps me out immensely. But otherwise, let's get into it. So first one out of the box, the one that probably everyone knows is Tableau. And where are we going to put this on a tier list? So Tableau is probably a lot of, especially if you work for a big company or an older style company, Tableau is probably what you're going to be using if you're on the data visualization team. It has just a massive adoption because it's been around for so long. And such, it's got a really well developed array of features. It's got a ton of different functionality, and you can also connect it to a lot of different enterprise services. However, I'm going to put it on the B tier because the issue I have with Tableau is it's so graphically dependent. While there are a lot of connectors, there are a lot of things that it connects to well. If it doesn't have a connector built out of the box to access that service, to pipe in data from it for a Tableau dashboard, it's going to be tough for you to build one yourself. And because data is such an ever-evolving field, there's new services coming out every day. I put a lot of importance on that capability because it is important. Even if you have one data source that you can't bring into your Tableau dashboard, it can be a huge pain in the ass. So that's why, while Tableau is really good at connecting to the things it's designed to connect to, when you break outside kind of that walled garden, then you're going to start running into some issues, and that's why I'm putting it at a B tier. Now, up at our next spot, we have Looker. And so Looker, I personally really liked using before Google acquired it. I thought it had a lot of cool functionality. The language of, hey, I can just write queries for my data and it'll query across all of my data. I thought it was really useful for someone that is super acquainted with, necessarily how to use dashboarding tools. Looker kind of democratizes that. You can connect it to almost any data source. It has a lot of functionality for extending it into different use cases. I will say, since Google has acquired it, it's not as great. So before I would put it as an S tier. Now I'm putting it at about an A tier, just because since it's been acquired by Google, you're kind of running into some of the same problems that I have with Tableau, in that it's becoming more of a walled garden where it's really integrated well into the Google stack. But once you extend it outside of Google, then you will start running into some issues. And so that is why I'm putting it at A tier rather than S, is because Google has kind of started to wall off the ability to extend it into some of those use cases that I really liked before. Now, next, and I just kind of I'll go through this quickly. So this is representing the Salesforce Analytics. So Salesforce, because they have a little tool for everything. They, of course, have an analytics tool, and I'm going to put this squarely at an F tier. I find it very unuseful. I've seen very few people actually, or any company I've used this in production, even though we're all using Salesforce. Everyone pipes their analytics out elsewhere because the built-in Salesforce Analytics tool is garbage. And that's because it suffers from the problem of not being able to connect to external data sources, even worse than Tableau. Obviously you can route data into Salesforce from other services, but Salesforce, it's not optimal. Typically, you're going to be taking data out of Salesforce, bringing it somewhere else to visualize it. And so doing it all within the platform, where typically you're going to want to link Salesforce data with other data sources to find those correlations, find interesting intersections of your data. It's going to be difficult to find it with Salesforce Analytics. So don't think it's designed well for really any use case. So putting it down at the F tier. Next, we have Sisense. So Sisense, I'm actually going to put at the same category of B as Tableau. It is a good enterprise tool. It has a lot of great functionality. It can handle, high volumes of data. It is designed for larger organizations. But again, and this is really kind of common across any analytics tool, if you don't have a system built in to enable end users to actually build their own connections to extend it to new data sources, you're always going to be cribbed by that kind of problem of, okay, now I'm in a walled garden. I can't, oh, I want to access this data source, but I can't. So I got to do some kind of hacky workaround because there isn't a system that allows me to kind of programmatically define these relationships, ingest data from these external sources. And so Sisense is very similar to Tableau in that regard, and that, it's really reliant on that graphic user interface. And so I'm putting it in the same category as Tableau for exactly that reason. If you are only using the data sources that it's really good at connecting to, go for it. Great tool. But as I said before, data space is always evolving, always going to be new tools. And, it's really tough for these companies to just constantly add on new connectors themselves. And so if they don't have tooling to do it for themselves, they're going into B tier. And next on the list, we have Splunk. So Splunk, it's kind of useful. So Splunk is an interesting, I'm putting it at C tier because actually, you know what? I'm going to put it up. So Splunk is kind of analytics for like backend resources. It's really good for monitoring, the health of your different systems, for monitoring, for, just analyzing machine generated data. So I personally just find the interface of Splunk, where it's just kind of an endless stream of data, really unpleasant. So that's why I'm putting it as C tier, but it is really useful for what it is good at. You know what? It honestly almost could be an A tier. No, it's going to be a B tier with our boys Tableau and Sisense for very different reasons. My big problem with Splunk is, while it is a lot of really useful information, it's really useful for managing, monitoring all that backend infrastructure. I find it's really slow for queries, and it's just really annoying. You have to be really specific. If it's, hey, I want to search for an error code, you have to be really specific about, what that error code is. It just doesn't have a lot of quality of life features that I think a lot of other tools do. Part of that is because, it is monitoring machine data, which is just inherently harder to read, but I'm going to put it as a B tier. That might be controversial, but yeah, that's where I stand. Now, maybe more exotic analytics tool, something you might not know if you're not working in marketing, is Domo. And so Domo is kind of just a dedicated marketing analytics tool. So I'm putting it at a C tier because it does have a ton of different connections. It actually has like almost 300 different connections to different services. It is kind of basic. It's really designed for people that aren't super acquainted with, hey, how can I generate reports? How do I do data analysis? It allows people that might not have those skills out of the box to generate reports, do those things, because it is, relatively easy to use. But the trade-off with that easy use is lack of functionality. More complex use cases, doesn't have ways for, programmatically bringing on new connectors, customizing it for particular use cases. So not my favorite, but it is useful for people that are maybe less technically competent. They need a tool that just kind of bridges that gap to allow them to start doing self-serve analytics. And then next on the here, I have Snowflake, which you might not have been thinking of as an analytics tool, but recently they have put out so many different releases around allowing you to run all your Python code on your data within Snowflake, visualize it, run a Streamlit application, that I really put them at an S tier. I am a huge fan of doing data analytics kind of natively through R and Python. Snowflake supports that. Snowflake allows you to host data apps directly next to your data, do data analysis without needing to bring your data to an external location. And because it's Python based, it's pretty easy to bring in external data sources into Snowflake. And just generally, I don't really think the only downside is there's a bit of a learning curve to being able to access all these new features, being able to understand how Snowpark and Snowflake interact. But even then, it's not really that difficult if you've already been working with Python analytics. So that's why Snowflake is going to be S tier. It just is everything you need in an analytics tool, even though it might not be typically thought of as one. I think the idea of doing your analytics right next to your data makes so much sense, because why do ETL processes just to bring your data to another source? Just to do analytics there? Do it next to your data, do it more efficiently, save money. So huge fan of Snowflake here. And our next tool is going to be ClickView, which is coming in at a D tier. This is similar to Domo. It's a self-serve data analytics tool, but I just find it very clunky. I don't like, kind of some of the things that it has sacrificed in the name of, being an interactive data analytics platform. I think it's super antiquated looking. I hate all the green and gray, which is a little, it's small nitpick, but I just generally don't like it. However, the reason why it's not an F tier is it is useful. again, similar to Domo, if you're not familiar with how to manage some of these systems, allows you to, kind of create your own dashboards, or, if you're looking at someone else's dashboards, it is pretty easy. They have some fun little graphics that make it easy for, for people to monitor whatever dashboards they're looking at, but really cribbed in functionality and terrible UI, if I do say so myself. So coming in at D tier. And then keeping a company in D tier, we have IBM Watson Analytics. And I bet most of you haven't even heard of it because it's just a not a good tool. Um, Watson is super cool. It was awesome that they were, able to create that first kind of set of AI assistants, but I just don't find this that useful. Every analytics tool is bringing some kind of AI next to the data, and there's a limit to how useful it is. Yes, it's useful. It kind of bridges that gap, like explaining what's going on in the data. But what I guess I say limited is that, okay, I can explain it. It doesn't get like much better than that. And so Watson doesn't really bring anything extra to the table. And then the downside is you're using an IBM Analytics product, super hard to connect to, not a lot of ecosystem around it, not a lot of developers using it. So just you have all the downsides of kind of using a proprietary tool with very few of the upsides of having that AI special sauce built into it. So IBM Watson coming in at a cool D. And next we have Power BI. Again, is it C or D? Is it C or D? I'm going to put it at C because Power BI, I just personally think it's kind of a rough interface. It's got that classic little Microsoft antique feel to it. So I'm not a huge fan of it, but I do see really the functionality for enterprise operations. It has a ton of different functionality. Bringing in data sources external from Microsoft is pretty tough, but if you're on like a full Azure stack, it's a pretty good tool for you. I'll be honest. It just is, the UX is super old school, and it is a little bit of a learning curve to getting to use it. But in my playing around with it, I have found it's pretty functional. It has a lot of good tooling, but yeah, it's got to stay at C tier because it's even more cribbed than something like Tableau or Sisense, because it's really designed to interact well with the Microsoft ecosystem and not really play well outside of that. So it's going to sit there at C tier. And that sums up my analytics tier list. As you can see, there are a couple other ones out there, but I'm not super familiar with them, so I don't want to give my take because it's not going to be well informed. These are all tools that I have actually looked at, I've played around with, so I feel comfortable giving you guys a rating of them because the data guy is all about integrity. So hope you enjoyed this tier list. Hope you found it useful for determining, hey, if I like this analytics tool or not. If you don't, let me know. If this kind of video was not useful, let me know. If you disagree with anything I said here, let me know in the comments. Let's start a discussion, okay? So above all else, have a great rest of your day. Data guy out. Peace.